All right, so we've got scripture to do, so let's get to it.
Morning, people. What's on the agenda? Yep.
7 people arrived at my toll booth with no change.
Not even on the seat.
No, great.
Work. I'm calling in sick, so you don't have to have them all declining. Excellent. Yep.
At 11, I'll call crying because you haven't updated your relationship status.
You're just one day.
Yeah.
After lunch, a box of nails will fall on my joint. Tires. Use gas station 3 months. I think I got one of shoes.
And me, you and me.
Take on the day.
I love that.
Actual goodness.
That's so,
Some people prefer to orange shoes.
such a fun, it's a fun commercial. All right, there's a little saying up here. It says, OJ, you've got something even better. What is it, Ben? Yeah, it's our faith. Good job, Ben. All right, so let's have somebody read this. Marcelo, can you read? Awesome. There you go. That second sentence. That's the part. It's like you don't have to worry about anything because you're at peace, right, guys? Aren't y'all at peace? Yeah. No stress. Marcella, who's praying for us today?
Dear God, thank you for giving us a nice encounter with Christ. We thank you for allowing us to come here today and allowing us to go safely. We ask that during the session that any student that we in this class be able to be grateful for this Jesus. We ask you to help us on this quiz today, and we ask your session to guide us and to allow us to know that everything is in your hands. We ask that because
Amen. Wow, so y'all had to do a research paper? I used to hate that. Oh. I really did used to hate that in high school. In grad school, that's all you do, though. So it's all good. All you do is look up stuff. Research, research, research. All right, so what we're going to do is this. You're going to take a little minor daily quiz that's kind of like a miniature free response. And it's basically one of these two scenarios. You're going to describe contractionary or expansionary monetary policy. So, which one would be expansionary? Do you all recall? Oh, you got it, Sydney? Go ahead. Okay, we want to move the aggregate demand curve to the right. That's good. How do we do it using monetary policy? Hold on. Time out. I heard some good stuff, but I'm focusing like a laser beam on the wrong answer. What did you say that was wrong? Say it. Say it again. Say it again. I'm pointing this out because this is a common mistake. Sometimes people revert back to fiscal policy because all of a sudden they remember that. Okay? She said lower taxes. Don't do that. Because monetary is about the money supply. So keep going, Marcella. What was it? Yeah. Is that good? She said buy bonds. What else? Yeah, so those three options. Good. So we'll draw, this is what it would look like. Okay, remember we did this in class? Okay. So Janet Yellen is going to buy the bonds. Okay. That's what shifts the money supply to the right. That's what lowers the interest rate. So it's like a little chain reaction. Okay. The lower interest rates increase investment, among other things. Okay. It will also depreciate the dollar, and it will increase consumption. Okay. So all of that stuff happens. And when that happens, the aggregate demand curve, which is the whole point of it, right, Sydney, will shift back to the right. And so we fix it. Cool? Mm-hmm. Looks like we shifted this curve as well, the AD curve. Mm-mm. Now, why? Let's demonstrate. So when you sell bonds, I don't know, do you remember the thing we did in class where I was the Fed and I actually sold you a bond? I don't know, maybe I sold one to Grace, and Grace gave me a $100 bill, and then I burned the $100 bill. So that's what makes the money supply smaller. Okay? So when you sell bonds, whoops, I knew I meant to correct that. When you sell bonds, okay, the money supply curve shifts to the left. That raises interest rates. Do you get that, Kelly? Why? Because all we're doing here is we're analyzing the equilibriums. Okay. So you see, at this supply of money, equilibrium interest rate 6%. But when the money supply decreases, you have a new equilibrium right here. And so now interest rates are higher. So that's why it does it. It's just the shifting of the curve causes a change in equilibrium. Okay, is that all right? All right, Gil? These two. Money market and ADAS. Jonathan. Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. Yes. You can do straight lines. Z always does. He uses a ruler. He's like really into it. He writes with a ruler? Really? Interesting. All right. That's cool. Yes, ma'am. That's not on there either? Dang it. I'm an idiot. Sorry. Real GDP and price level. Sorry about that. Yeah. I would not have gotten credit for this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so anyway, continuing with this, so the money supply gets smaller, so interest rates go up, okay? That will appreciate the dollar. It will also make it more expensive to buy new equipment as a business or more expensive to buy cars as a consumer. So consumption, investment, and exports all decrease, and that shifts the AD curve back to the left. So we fix the inflation problem. Everybody cool? Yeah, Yanni? Yeah. Okay, so remember we had two types of investment? Okay, so when we appreciate the dollar, we're talking about foreign financial investors. So they seek the higher rate of return. So when they're seeking that high 8% interest rate, they got to buy dollars. Okay? Hey, Stephanie. I know, y'all are almost done. It's pretty cool. No, we have to do it. I think that's what that means. Kelly, so you think nobody else does either? Oh, it's the semester average. All right, let's roll. So today, guys, this is a tough day. I need y'all to take notes for all these absentees because it's not tough. It's just we're going to do some complicated math type stuff. Okay? So you're going to be able to calculate the change in the money supply as a result of changes in this new thing called the money multiplier. Okay? So just like we had a spending multiplier before and a tax multiplier, now we have a money multiplier. Okay? You'll also see it referred to as a deposit expansion multiplier. The money multiplier is easier. Ben. Mm-hmm. Each unit, yeah. And the lowest daily quiz. So they always have. They're still there, but they don't compute into the average. Okay. All right. So your homework. You got 2 homework assignments. Okay. I want to point something out. Okay. Now normally y'all can only do it once, right? And the grade gets popped in. On this first one, it's a practice thing. So you can do it as much as you want to get 100 if you want. No. I'm saying that it's going to be using the things you learned today, and I want to make sure you know it. Because if you don't know it, you really need to know this. Okay? So I'm giving you some practice to do it, and then this other one. Okay? And this is all in chapter 15 of your book. So if you need, if you get confused, if you have a book, you can look in chapter 15. Oh, there's, I didn't check y'all's class, but I noticed the rest of the A-Day classes, there were 2 homework problems that most people missed. So I thought I'd go over them real fast. Is that okay? So, and I checked this before y'all did it, so y'all may have done fine on it, I don't know. But anyway, which of the following would cause the demand for money to increase? So here, we're talking about the actual demand curve shifting, right? So what would cause it to go up, to increase? Here's the right answer. But why are the other ones the wrong answer? Okay? So, for example, if everything costs more, we need more money to buy those things, right? So that's what the first answer choice is, and that's what this would do. Okay, and we did an example in class where we used lunch prices, and when lunch price went from $5 to $10, we demanded more money. Do y'all remember that? Okay. And then we did a couple of little questions at the end of class where it talked about if nominal GDP increases, then that will increase the demand for money. Do y'all remember that? Because the nominal part was the price level changing. So that's why these are wrong. Okay, a decrease and a decrease, neither one of those would do it. Okay? And then changes in the interest rate, all that does is move along the curve. So that's why that one doesn't work. Okay. Y'all good with this? And then this one, some people had issue with as well. 51% got it right. So all of the following is likely to occur if the Fed lowers the discount rate except. So on this one, if they lower the discount rate, which way does the money supply curve shift? To the right. Okay. So if it shifts to the right, interest rates fall, right? If interest rates go down, what happens to investment and consumption? They all increase, right? And if those increase, what happens to aggregate demand? It increases. The only thing that doesn't would be the net exports, and this goes to what Jonathan asked a little while ago. If interest rates fall, then the dollar depreciates. And if the dollar depreciates, then you'll get the opposite of this. Okay, exports would actually increase. All right. Okay, you guys remember what M1 is? Yeah, oh, you all got it. So M1 is really just the money supply. Okay, when we generically say money supply, we're talking about M1. And it is absolutely currency plus demand deposits. Okay, demand deposits are your checking accounts. So checkable deposits, that's a way to look at it. Now, what y'all may not realize is that when we're talking about the Fed increasing the money supply, what they're really doing is they're increasing these demand deposits. Okay? It's not like they're printing a ton of currency, although they may do that, okay, as people need it, but it's really they're focusing on the demand deposits, which will increase the money supply. Okay? So is that cool for y'all? How many of y'all read the Pine Gulch story? No, I didn't make that. I would have made it shorter. Okay. But let's talk about Slim real fast. What did Slim do? Don't look at the one bad thing he did. Okay? Look at the good thing he did. Well, he shouldn't have taken the money, right? But anyway, he basically, if y'all remember correctly, he held people's gold, and then he would issue receipts for that gold, right? Or a little paper, green and pink colored paper or whatever. Does that make sense? Okay. And he'd loan some of it out, right? You remember that? Okay. The act of loaning it, that's what increases the money supply. So for those of you that didn't maybe get it the first time, we're going to do a sort of a smaller version of it. And so I need a narrator. Who's a good narrator? Gil! Do your best Morgan Freeman. You ready? Go. No, that's okay. Just do as good a job as Morgan Freeman would. You don't have to use his voice.
Once upon a time, there was a goldsmith who offered to store people's gold in his home. He issued paper receipts for the gold, and it was not long before the townsfolk used the paper to purchase eggs and beer. Smith's paper receipts for his checks became as good as gold.
Nice.
Our Smith was not stupid. He said to himself, I have 2,000 ounces of gold stored in my vault. In the last year, I was never called upon to pay out more than 100 ounces a single day. What harm could it do if I lend out, say, half of the gold I now have? I'll still have more than enough to pay off any depositors that come in for a withdrawal. No one will know the difference. I could earn 30 additional ounces of gold each week. I think I'll do that. The goldsmith,
That's
the goldsmith has invented the fractional reserve banking system.
perfect. That's enough. All right. Whew. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, no. Yeah, that was impressive. So this whole thing, in fact, our banking system is referred to as a fractional reserve banking system. The reason it is because the Fed sets a reserve requirement. So banks are allowed to loan to other people a fraction of your account, and then they hold on to a fraction of your account. So that's why it's called a fractional reserve banking system. So the advantages are that, first of all, when the bank makes a loan from your deposits, you don't actually lose money, okay? The computer still says you have that amount of money, right? But when they make that loan, now another person has new money that didn't exist before, okay? And they might even deposit it into another account of their own. So it increases the money supply like that. And this is important because number 2 is kind of cool. I mean, yeah, you can earn some interest by depositing your money, but number 3 is the big reason why this is important. Okay? The loans affect the whole community because it increases economic activity. So what we're going to do now is we're going to show how it is that the money supply increases. Oh, this other stuff up here? You don't need that. Yeah, depositors don't lose their money. Okay? The interest you earn, the bank can give back to some of it to its depositors, and then overall, the loans benefit the community by increasing economic activity. You want to sit where Z sits today? No, you're good. All right. Just checking. All right. So I'm going to skip this because it's not important. I'm going to go through this very quickly. You don't have to write all this down because we're going to actually talk about all of these things individually in detail, or we've already talked about them, okay? So if you just want to absorb this, that'd be great. So we already talked about the fractional reserve banking system, okay? All that means is a percentage of your demand deposit must be set aside in reserve and not loaned out, okay? Vault cash, it's exactly what it sounds like. Okay, banks keep some of those reserves in their vault. Some of those reserves they also keep on deposit at the Fed. Okay. Required reserves, we've talked about that. That's just the percentage of a demand deposit that must be set aside and not loaned out. We haven't talked about excess reserves, but that's the focus of today. Okay. If I make a $100 deposit, the bank sets aside $10 of it as required reserves. The other 90 become its excess reserves. That's important because excess reserves is what a bank is allowed to loan, okay? Then you have total reserves, okay? That's just your required reserves plus your excess reserves. We're going to learn about the money multiplier today. That is 1 divided by the reserve requirement expressed as a decimal. So in that example up here, the reserve requirement's 10%, so the money multiplier is going to be 1 divided by 0.10. Everybody get that? Okay. So in this case, the money multiplier would be 10. And here's a bunch of different multipliers, if you couldn't do it in your head, but I think y'all can. A balance sheet we're going to talk about next time. Okay, but you saw a little bit of that in the Pine Gulch story, didn't you? He taught you a little bit about accounting, and then you had the T accounts. That's what a balance sheet is. We've already talked about the discount rate. We've talked about the federal funds rate before. We've talked about the prime rate. All 3 of these, you need to know the difference, by the way, for the test. So those are important, at least to note. And we know that buying bonds makes the money supply bigger, and we know that selling bonds makes the money supply smaller. So we good to go? Oh, these 3. I mean, don't just gloss over them. You need to know what the difference is between these 3. Okay? The discount rate, federal funds rate, prime rate. All right, so anybody know this painting? What's it called? Anybody? It is. It's what? Close. I'm trying to give you all a little bit of culture. I think the word creation is in it. The creation, something like that. So I'm using that to illustrate the creation of money, okay? And now you can't see all these words, so I'm going to get rid of the painting. So we need to know all of these, you can call them formulas, equations. I like to refer to all these as relationships because all of these terms that we looked at on the last slide are related to each other in some way. All right? So the top one up here, total reserves. Okay, so TR stands for total reserves. That's the total amount of cash money the bank owns. Okay? When I make a deposit in the bank now has my money, so that becomes part of their total reserves. Okay? They're going to set aside part of my deposit as required reserves, so that's what the RR is, required reserves. Okay? And they're going to set aside the other part as excess reserves, which they are then allowed to loan to other people. Okay, so total reserves is equal to required reserves plus excess reserves. Now, that RR has another meaning. Okay, the other meaning's related to the first one, but they're not the exact same thing. Okay, so RR also stands for reserve requirement. Okay, so it's required reserves and it's reserve requirement. They sound like the same thing, but one of them we're talking about a percent, the other we're talking about a dollar value of that percent. Okay, you'll get the difference? A demand deposit. Okay, so then we have this thing, PMC. Okay, PMC just stands for potential money creation or potential money created. Okay, in other words, how much bigger can the money supply get if a bank makes a loan? Okay, and so to find that, we're going to take our money multiplier, which I have the equation down here, is 1 divided by point RR. And we multiply the money multiplier times the excess reserves. Okay? Then we have what's called total money supply. Okay, so another way this might be asked is, how large could the money supply become if a bank makes a loan? In that case, we're looking at the total money supply. And in that one, we're looking at the PMC plus the demand deposit. So let's go through examples. Okay, let's do that. So I said I made a deposit, right? I get $100. And I deposit it in my bank. That whole $100 goes to the bank's total reserves. Okay? If the reserve requirement is 10%, so let's pretend it is, then they're going to take 10 of those dollars and they're going to set them aside as required reserves. Gil? No, I just didn't. Yeah, no. They're the same. Thank you for asking. And then that means that $90 goes to excess reserves. So far, so good. The neat thing about the excess reserves is that means the bank can actually make loans from that. Okay? They can't loan the other 10. They can loan that 90, though. All right? Then we've got this PMC. So let's fill this out. If the reserve requirement's 10%, that means we're going to divide 1 by 0.1. And that number is going to become 10. So the money multiplier is 10. So we can actually calculate how much bigger the money supply can get by doing this. We'll put 10 times our excess reserves, which means we can grow the money supply by $900. Does that make sense? It's okay if it doesn't. Just understand the math right now. We're going to show you why this happens. All right, and then the total money supply then could be as big as the 900 newly created money plus my original deposit for a grand total of 1,000. Okay? That's basically what we're doing today. You're going to have to tell me how much bigger the money supply can get, or how big the money supply would become, or what's the multiplier, or how much can a bank loan out, all these different things that you'll get from all of these different numbers. Everybody cool? Okay. So here's our first example. Y'all know Ron Swanson? Where does he keep his money? In the ground. That's right, he doesn't trust banks. But he's going to try it one time. So he's going to deposit $1 into a bank. Okay? That $1 is subject to the 10% reserve requirement. So how much would this bank's required reserves increase by? 10 cents. Good job. Okay? How much of this dollar then goes to excess reserves? 90 cents. Very good. So the 10 plus the 90 gives us total reserves of $1. Everybody get that? Okay. So how much can this bank loan if they wanted to? 90 cents. All right, good. So potentially, this is how much money could be created by the bank. Okay? If they were to loan out all 90 cents, so 90 cents is down here, and the money multiplier is 10, then Ron's dollar could end up spawning another $9. Okay, so you could think of it that way. It's creating money, okay? So the money supply could grow by $9, which means the total money supply could be as big as 9 plus the 1, or $10. Everybody cool? All right, I'm purposely going slow. All right, real quick, the 10% reserve requirement. This is only deposits are subject to that. Okay, so if a bank gets money from any other source other than a depositor, it's not subject to that. All right, does that make sense? Good question. So a bank could get money from another source, and I'll give you some hints, and then you tell me how they get it, okay? One source they would have to pay the discount rate for. Do you know what that is? Getting money from the Fed, good job. You get the other one, I'm going to give you a nickel. Or they could get money from another source where they have to pay the federal funds rate. Think about it. Do it. Say what he said. Other banks. Good. So let's look what happens at Ron's bank. I forgot to get my nickels out. Here's an example. Swanson's bank borrows money from the Fed. Okay? So if his bank borrows money from the Fed, they still have to pay it back at the discount rate. But why would they borrow money from the Fed? There could be some legitimate reasons, right? Maybe, think of it this way. What if, go back to Ron, what if this bank accidentally loaned out a whole dollar? They're not allowed to do that, so they'd have to borrow money from the Fed in order to make up that shortfall, okay? They don't have to borrow a whole dollar, but let's say they borrow $1 now, okay? Since this is not a deposit, how much of this dollar goes to required reserves? 0. Who said that? Good job. Okay, so I'll pay you, and I'll pay Katie. I did pay you? Give me that back. Should I? I'm going to pass it down this row. If it gets to Gil, that's fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too. Okay? All right, so Katie is right. 0 of this dollar goes to required reserves. But Katie, how much of the dollar goes to excess reserves? All of it, okay? So if the Fed borrows money, if the bank borrows money from the Fed, they can loan all of that money to other people if they want, okay? So here's an example why they might do that. What if the Fed is charging them 2% as a discount rate, but then they can loan this money out at 5%? Would that be a good thing for the bank? Yeah, that's how they could make a profit, okay? So total reserves would also be $1. And so potentially, if the bank does loan out the whole dollar, and then the whole banking system does its job, then potentially that dollar could become $10. So new money created would be 10. Okay? Y'all get that? All right. That's also the total money supply. Remember, total money supply is PMC plus demand deposit. In this case, there is no deposit, so it'd be PMC plus 0. So they're the same thing. All right, are we good? Just kind of an overview right now. So we're going to do an example, a short example, okay? We've got these 3 girls. What the heck? It's a money construction zone. So this girl, okay, what's her name, Erin? Okay. Erin says we're fixing to create money by loaning it out, okay? Ashley says she's going to start it by depositing $100 in her bank account. Cool deal? Okay. And then what's this girl's name? Natalie. She says, by the way, the reserve requirement's 10%. Okay. Actually, let's do it different because we did 10% the last 2 times. Let's say the reserve requirement now is 20%. 20%. Okay? So, moving forward, we're going to pretend the reserve requirement is 20%. So let me write that up here. So we'll remember. And Ashley said she's making a $100 deposit, right? Okay. So she currently has $100 in her pocket, and she has nothing in her bank account. So right now the money supply is 100. She's going to transfer the money from her purse or wallet or whatever it is, I don't know what girls carry, into her demand deposit. So now $100 is here, and there's 0 there. Money supply is still 100. So when you make a deposit of cash, the money supply doesn't change immediately. Okay, it's only going to change after this bank makes a loan. So how much can this bank loan? Huh? It's 80, okay? So let's say, I don't know, Grace. Grace borrows $80, okay? So Grace puts the $80 in her pocket, all right? The computer still says Ashley has $100 though, right? Okay. So the demand deposits are still 100. What happened to the money supply? It went up by 80, right? Cool. And then what if Grace deposits the money into her account? Or what if she buys something and then whoever she bought it from deposits it into her account? Now we've got 180 in checking accounts, right? And we would have 0 as cash. So we're still there. When you transfer cash from your pocket to a bank, then this goes down and this goes up because nothing happens yet. But now how much can the bank loan out? What do y'all think? It's what? Let's do some math real quick. So let's start here. Total reserves is equal to the required reserves plus the excess reserves. Everybody agree with that? Okay. So when this deposit's made, okay, the bank has $100 in total reserves. It sets 20 aside as required, and then it has 80, right? Okay. So then they make that loan. Okay. When they make this loan, now they only have $20 of actual cash in the bank. Am I right? So the total reserves drop to 20. The required reserves is still 20. And now they have no excess reserves. Okay, y'all get that? Okay. When this 80 is redeposited into an account, now the bank has $100 again. Okay? But now their deposits add up to 180. So what's the required reserves? What would that be? 20% of 180? Yeah? Where's Z when I need them? Okay. And that means excess reserves are 64. So this bank could loan out another 64, couldn't they? So what if they do? Somebody now has $64 cash. We still have 180 in our checking accounts. So the money supply now is what? See how it gets bigger? So what I need y'all to understand from this is that every time a bank makes a loan, what happens to the money supply? It increases, okay? So going back to what I said a little while ago about what the Fed is trying to do, if they want to increase the money supply, what they're really doing is trying to get banks to make loans. And there's a bunch of ways they do that. So if the Fed buys bonds, okay, that puts cash in our hands, right? And then we put that cash in our bank, and then our bank loans it out. That's how the money supply gets bigger. Okay, so we go back for a second. Remember, the bank's reserves is only the actual cash dollars it has, okay? So the only cash money that exists in this economy with just the few people that are in it is the $100, right? So we've got to make sure the total reserves can never be more than 100 because that's the only actual cash that exists. Okay? I don't know if that answered your question or not. Okay. Cool. Well, we're going to do some more concrete examples. Okay? That one we did on the fly with whatever numbers we wanted. We're going to make more sense now. Okay? So let's see. Looks like somebody deposits $1,000 into an account. Everybody agree? So there is now $1,000 in this bank. This bank has a reserve requirement of 10%. So how much must that bank set aside and not loan to anybody? $100. And then that means they can loan how much? $900. So we've got our required reserves here in this column, and we've got our excess reserves over here. So far, so good? All right. So we'll do some examples. Maybe we'll get, I don't know, Jonathan borrows $900 so he can buy a dog. Okay, this dog happens to be able to yo-yo, so it's kind of cool. That's why it was so expensive. So what does the breeder do with the $900? He's going to put it in his bank, okay? At least remember I told you that that PMC, what's that stand for? Okay. So when we say potential, that means that's the most it could possibly increase by, okay? What if the breeder didn't deposit the $900? Maybe it deposited half. Would the money supply grow by as much as we're suggesting it could? It wouldn't, okay? So that's what we call it, a potential money creation. Let's keep going though. He deposits 900. How much of the 900 has to be set aside? 90 bucks. That means 810 can be loaned out. All right. So Gil and Aiden, they go halvesies on an all-you-can-eat membership at Hooters. Okay. That means y'all can share it. You know, one of you go one day, one the other day. So all year long, you can eat as many hot wings as you want. What does the Hooters manager do with the $810? Puts it in his bank. You see how this is working? Okay. And how much must the bank set aside? And then the rest of it they can loan. Okay. Anybody here fit this criteria? You like cats and you fear for your life. Anybody? Okay, good. All right, Olive is going to borrow the $729 to get a cat bodyguard. That's why, honestly, if cats did have guns, they would kill us, because I don't think cats like people. All right. Again, though, the breeder puts the money in the bank, okay? Sets aside 10%, loans out the rest, and we could keep going, okay? Maybe somebody gets a smoking cat, okay? And so what ends up happening to the money supply? If we kept on going, it gets bigger and bigger, right? Can y'all figure out how big it's going to get? Like if we kept adding up this column, how big this column would be? Well, let's talk about it. I'll give you a hint. This column right here is going to add up eventually to $1,000, okay? Because the cash that it actually exists in the economy, if the loans are maximized, will end up adding up to the required reserves, okay? So this column over here is going to be new money created when it's all done. Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. Well, it'll work both ways. Look, let me show you. All right. So this column right here, it'll add up to this column from here down. Okay? So this is essentially the same as the deposits. It's just that before it's a deposit, it's here, then it goes here. Right? So your thinking's right. Okay? Now when it's loaned out, it becomes money. But when it gets redeposited, it's also money, but then it can create even more money. So let's figure this out. We had a formula for potential money creation, didn't we? Okay. So what numbers would I use if I wanted to add up the new money created? Go ahead. Okay, Stephanie, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. So you did that. So you would get 9,000 if you kept doing this process over and over and over and over until you had zero left. Or we can just use our math. Take 900 times 10, because that's the money multiplier. And so we end up like that. So what's the total money supply then? You got the 9,000 plus what already existed. What would that be, Stephanie? You got it. Okay? So the total money supply could become as large as 10,000. You'll get that? Yes, sir, Gil? I don't know if that will always work. Maybe it will. Yeah, if it's 10%, I guess so. Yeah. So what if it's 20%? Okay. So real quick, let's put on our thinking caps. Earlier we talked about, last class, we talked about if the Fed raises the reserve requirement, what happens to the money supply? Does it get bigger or smaller? It gets smaller. So let's demonstrate why. Okay. So Sam makes a $1,000 deposit. Okay. How much of that 1,000 has to be set aside when the reserve requirement is 20%? 200. That means 800 can be loaned out, right? Okay. So in this example, I think Nick borrows the money. Y'all know Nick Martinez? Okay. Nick Martinez borrows $800 so that he can buy an RJ bobblehead. Okay, cool? So the bobblehead manufacturer takes the $800 and puts it where? In the bank. Facebook. Huh? Yeah. The BL Facebook site. Yeah. So the bank sets aside 20% of this 800, right? How much is that? 160. Good. So we put 160 here. We put 640 out here, though. So 640 is available for new loans. Okay. So who borrows this one? Oh yeah, Corbin. Corbin borrows $640 to commission an oil painting of himself. Okay. Nice. So what does the artist do with the money? Puts it in the bank. Okay. So now this bank has to set aside 20%. Okay. I forget who borrows this one. Oh, this is just some random guy. That's right. So just some random guy borrows 512 so we can get more piercings. He wants to either stay unemployed or only be employable at a Starbucks. Okay. So the artist does that. Do you really? Oh. Don't they have the guys with gauges, though? Don't they work there? Oh, okay. It just kind of looks weird, though. I'm just too conservative, I guess. 102.40 gets set aside. 409.60 is now available. And this one, I don't know if y'all know Christine. Christine Ellinger. She's a junior. Okay. Yeah, she is. So she borrows the money for hairnets. And anyway, it'll keep going and on and on and on. But what's it really going to add up to? Stephanie, pick somebody to do the same thing you did. Courtney? Okay. What's the money supply going to increase by if we keep going? Huh? Is it 8? Huh? Oh, you're confused. Okay, tell her how to do it real quick. Okay, good. So that means, now you're both kind of right because you were telling her the total money supply. You get the $800, multiply it by 5, because 5 comes from 1 divided by 0.2 up here. Okay, reserve requirement's 20%, so that's 0.2. So the money multiplier is 5. Then the total money supply is going to end up becoming as large as 5,000. Okay, so there's a shortcut here. If you want, you can calculate total money supply by adding the potential money creation plus the original deposit, or you can just multiply the original deposit by the money multiplier, which is 5. So you get it either way. Cool? So did the amount the money supply increase by, it's not nearly as large when the reserve requirement was changed to 20%, right? Okay. But, whoops. What if the reserve requirements drop to 5%? Now how much bigger is the money supply going to grow by? A lot. What's 1 divided by 0.05? 20. Okay, so we can do the same thing. Okay, so now 1,000's deposited, only $50 has to be set aside. They can loan out 950. Okay, I'm not going to go through all these because I think we got it down by now, so I'm going to skip ahead. Got the donuts. Got all that. All right. So now you take 950, which was our original excess reserves. We multiply that by our money multiplier, which is 20. And so potentially the money supply could grow by 19,000. Okay? So you lower the reserve requirement, money supply gets a lot bigger. Okay. All right, so y'all good? You happy? It's not too bad? All right, so let's do another type of scenario. What if, so when we talked about buying bonds, okay, if the Fed bought a bond from Monty would deposit the $1,000 in his bank. And so the money supply would grow whenever the Fed buys bonds. You'll see how that works? And then when we talked about Ron Swanson's bank borrowing money from the Fed, if the Fed lowers the discount rate, it makes it more feasible for a bank to borrow from the Fed and then loan that money out to other people. So the money supply gets bigger. Okay? Okay? So that's how those three tools will work to change the money supply. All right. Now, there could be a problem. Oh, is that your brother? Where? Which one? This guy? Cool. All right. Well, let's see. Who's going to narrate this? Aiden, go. Now, yeah, you got to be everybody. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. We're almost there. Perfect. All right. Forget about all the rest of that. What about his question? If we all went to the banks at the same time to get all of our money, would it be there? No. It would not be there. It would not be there at all.
You're thinking of this place all wrong. As if I had the money back in a safe. The money's not here. Well, your money's in Joe's house. That's right next to yours. And in the Kennedy house, and Mrs. Maitland's house, and 100 others. And you're going to give them the money to build, and then they're going to pay it back to you as best they can. And what are you going to do? Foreclose on them?
There you go. It wouldn't be there, right? So why don't we panic and run to the bank like they did back then? Who knows the answer? Didn't work. What didn't work?
Because the stock market went down, everyone went to the bank, and they took out all their money.
But why would they take out all their money? Okay. Why don't we get scared? That's what I want to know. Oh. Okay, checks, credit cards, what else, Ben? That still doesn't answer why I don't panic and go get my money, Courtney. No, that's not it. They had one back then, too. All right, here's what it is. We have deposit insurance. Okay, we didn't have that back then. So if you think about it, way back in the early 30s, okay, this was passed in 1934. But before that, if a bank went out of business, you lost all your life savings if it was in there. Okay, you lost all your money. And so anytime something bad was going to happen, guess what people did? They had to go get their money out before the bank closed. Because if they didn't, they'd never get it. So today we don't do that because if your bank goes out of business, it's no big deal. Okay? In fact, the bank I currently have has already changed hands twice during the last 10 years. Okay? It was Washington Mutual. No, it was something else before that. Anyway, it was some bank before Washington Mutual, and it went out of business. And Washington Mutual took it over, and everything was fine. Then Washington Mutual went out of business, and now it's Wells Fargo. So another bank takes it over under instructions from the Fed, and we have insurance, so you always get your money back. Okay, cool? That's important. Hey, Leslie. Yes. All right, we're going to do a bunch of examples now. And the wording in our examples is more indicative of different ways you'll see the same question being asked, okay? Like, for example, I'm not going to ask you, what is the PMC? Okay? Instead, I'm going to say something like, how much could the money supply increase by if this happens? Okay? So by how much increase, that would be potential money creation. Or I might ask you, how big could the total money supply become as a result of blah, blah, blah? All right? So here, this is first, okay? It looks like excess reserves in the banking system are currently 0. Okay? And then Katy Perry deposits in the banking system $40 billion. The reserve requirement is 20%. So far, so good? All right. When she deposits $40 billion of currency into a demand deposit, what happens to the money supply? All right, you're missing it. So earlier I told y'all that when you transfer cash from your pocket to a bank account, nothing happens yet. Okay? Yeah, it stays at 40 for now. All right? Once a loan is made, then the money supply can increase. All right? So let's go through our process here. Let's have Jessica, you go first. But before you answer number 2, I want to remind you in the class that our starting point for every question, until you really get this, is to fill out the numbers that belong in this. Okay? So I want you to fill out those numbers that result from a $40 billion deposit. We'll drop the billion, just say $40. Yeah. Sure. But you don't even have to do that yet. I just want you to fill out these numbers. All right. The TR is the total amount of money the bank now has. So if she gives them $40, that's the 40, okay? So see, it's good that we're doing this because I'm trying to kickstart it here. All right, so 40 goes here. What goes to RR? No, we've got, it's 20% of the deposit. Good. And then it's plus what? No, there's no 0. No. What's the equal sign mean?
Oh, so that I know.
Okay, that's all right. Good. So you were the guinea pig. Okay. So what's it asking you? Perfect. See how that worked? All right, good. So potentially the bank could loan out $32, right? Okay. So if they loan out that $32,
So the TR is like what
it's basically how much does their total reserves change by as a result of that deposit. Okay? So when she makes the deposit, the bank sets all 40 as total reserves. Then they set 8 of it as required reserves. That means 32 of it can be loaned out. So now Kelly's going to answer this question. The potential money creation of the banking system through loans would be how much? So for this, no? PMC is what you're trying to figure out, okay? To do it, you got to get the money multiplier times the excess reserves. Not 0.8. Okay. Now answer the question. PMC is awesome. Okay. 160. All right, cool. Yes, ma'am? Yeah. So, will you pass it back? So, how we got the 8 is like this, okay? 40 was deposited. 20% of the 40 is set aside. So, 20% of 40 is 8. Okay? Everybody got it? All right. Sydney, the potential total money supply, that means now all the demand deposits that are created by the loan process, could be as much as what? Let's fill out some numbers here. Total money supply is equal to, I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this. Okay? Or total money supply is equal to the money multiplier times the demand deposit. Okay? So Kelly worked really, really hard and got us this 160, right? So put that as your potential money created. and then add in the demand deposit. It's what she deposited. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So she makes a $40 deposit, okay? The bank loans out 32, right? And then that 32 gets deposited, 20% of it gets set aside, and it just keeps on going and going and going, right? So Sydney, our shortcut is the $40 can become as big as 40 times the multiplier, which is 5, which is 200, okay? The longer way of doing it is to get Kelly's response, which was 160, and then we add the deposit that originally started it, which is 40, and so it adds up to 200. Okay? You guys good? Okay. It can be tricky. So let's have Katie. You're not going to do number 4. You're going to do number 5, okay? Number 4, though, let's answer real fast, all right? The reserve requirement applies to checkable deposits. Where do you think? Banks, S&Ls, everywhere, okay? So the answer is all depository institutions. All right, Katie, you're up. And before we do anything, until we really know what we're doing, guys, always start here and fill in those numbers, okay? You're on. Okay, so we put that in. Okay. It was at one time, but it's not today. Okay? Tell you what, don't strain. Let's start over for a second, and I'll show you how it's not anymore, okay? So we'll do this again. TR equals RR plus ER, okay? So at one point in time, the total reserves was 100,000, okay? And the required reserves are, what, 25% of that, okay? That means at one point in time, the excess reserves were 75,000. Cool? What are they today, though? So now there's 6,000. So something must have happened. Looks like 69,000, something happened to that to get us to 6,000, right? Okay. The reserve requirement is still 25% of deposits because they're not allowed to touch that, right? So what happened? There's 69,000 left the excess reserves. That means 69,000 also left the total reserves. So the total reserves are how big? 31. Okay. So now let's figure out what exactly happened to that. What happened to the other 69,000? What do you think? The bank bought something? They loaned it. That's the key, okay? They loaned it. That's important, all right? So banks are in business to loan, okay? They earn a higher interest rate on their loans than they pay their depositors. So they want to loan out as much as they can, all right? So that's why the total reserves are now 31,000. So remember, we always start here. TR equals RR plus ER. On this example, y'all were given ER of 6,000. And you were told RR is 25%, so it's 25% of 100,000. So when you add those together, it's 31,000. And then as an extra bonus, Katie told us what happened to the other 69,000. Okay, it got loaned out. So everybody get that? All right. Cool, so let's do Mas. All right, let's see, who else should go? Grace. Caitlin deposits $1,000 in a bank that has a reserve requirement of 10%. The maximum possible change in the dollar value of that local bank's loans would be what? Like this one loan. I mean, this one bank can loan how much? Nope. Not yet. What's another way of stating loans, or how much can a bank loan? What can they loan? Excess reserves. Okay. So that's actually what we're looking for. So fill out our numbers. How much of that goes to total reserves? Okay. Okay. So you really just answered it. How much can the bank loan? 900. Everybody follow that? 900. That's what they're allowed to do. All right, cool. So Leslie, you get a slightly more difficult question. Okay. The potential money created by the banking system could be as much as what? You got to make sure you have those numbers written down. I'm sorry, it's not numbers. This. All right, let's fill out our numbers together then. Okay. So Grace gave us our excess reserves, right? Okay, what is that? Perfect. Okay. And now you have to figure out what our money multiplier is. So do you have that somewhere where you could look?
Oh, 1 divided
Nope. What's it say on your notes? Divided by 0.RR. So the 0.RR, now we're looking for the percent instead of the dollar value. Okay? The reserve requirement, the required reserves is 100, but the reserve requirement is 10%. So you have to know, you have to distinguish these things by context. Okay? Okay. So our answer? 9,000. Good. Okay. So where did she get the 10, Shelby? Where did she get 10 for that? Where did she get this 10? Perfect. Okay. That's how she got it. 1 divided by 0.1. All right, good. So, question? I heard somebody. No? Okay, good. Courtney, so potentially how big can the money supply become? $10,000. Okay, good. All right, so I'll pay her too. Here, pass that back. All right, y'all good with that so far? Any questions? It's okay if you do. All right, Jonathan, suppose a commercial bank has demand deposits of $100,000 and the reserve requirement is 10%. If the bank's required reserves and excess reserves are equal, then its total reserves are what? I'm going to write this down because you always start here. Possible. Okay, I'm just going to put 10. Okay. Yeah, they're equal. Yeah, so that's 10, and this would be 20. Very good. Okay. What happened to the other 80,000 this bank used to have? They loaned it out. Okay. It's not hard to get. They loaned it out. You guys got that? Okay. So the total reserves do not have to equal the demand deposits. That's the key there. Okay. And if they don't equal the demand deposits, that means they loaned out the rest of it. Okay. Cool. And total reserves minus required reserves will give you excess reserves. Let's see if I got more. Yeah, I got more. Okay, good. Aiden, suppose the BL Bank has demand deposits of $500,000 and the reserve requirement's 10%. If the institution has excess reserves of $4,000, then what is its total reserves. $54, good. You want to tell them how you did it? Because nobody saw the wheels turning, nobody heard any calculations. I want to know, they want to know how you did it. Good, did y'all hear all that? Okay, good job. Yeah, so he took 10% of 500,000 to get his required reserves, which became 50,000. He added that to 4,000, so his total reserves are 54,000. Very good. All right. Let's see. Oh, I need to pay you. Pass that back if you feel like it. All right. Gil, did you end up not getting your nickel earlier? Oh, you did get it? Okay. All right, well, that's good. All right, so Benjamin. If excess reserves in a bank are $4,000 and demand deposits are $40,000 and the required reserves is 10%, then total reserves are what? $8,000. All right, so it's getting easier, guys, as we do it. Okay. You get kind of an old school one, but it's still good. All right. Jonathan, Courtney alluded earlier that she thinks that the reason we have a reserve requirement is to make our money available. Do you think that's right? Do you think that's true or false? It is false. Do you know why? That's right. So it's just an added bonus that the reserve requirement makes the bank have your money available, okay? But it's really to influence their lending decisions, okay? As the bank lends money, money's created. If they don't lend as much, then you don't have as much created. So that's the purpose of it, okay? All right, we got more. Who hasn't won an award yet? Marcella, you haven't won? I left you out. I feel bad. But what did you win? What did you win last weekend? So what's better? You want a nickel or your state championship? All right. So Marcella, if I write you a check for $1 and we both have our checking accounts at the Poor Man Bank, the bank's balance sheet, all that means is their accounting of their reserves. Okay, that's all that means. Will increase, decrease, or be unchanged. No, I write you a check. And we both have our accounts at the same bank. Yeah, you're going to put it in the bank. Oh, let's look at why. All right. All right, so I write you a $1 check, right? So that means the bank has my $1 as total reserves. And they're going to hold, is it 10? It doesn't matter. Whatever the reserve requirement is, we'll say it's 10%. And they set aside 80, okay? So as I write you a check, okay, they're going to pull, oh yeah, my bad. Thank you. Okay, now you can't read it, but when I write you a check and you go to deposit it into your account, the bank's going to take my dollar, okay? So let's pretend for a split second this goes to 0 and these become 0, okay? But then when you deposit the same dollar into that bank, total reserves is back to $1, that's back to 10 cents, this is back to 90 cents. So it doesn't change. Okay? So do you want another chance? All right. Do banks create or destroy money when they make loans? They do. And when I repay a loan, what happens to money? It's destroyed. There you go. So, whoops. Oh well. And this is why. So when a bank loan is repaid, the money supply is decreased. Shelby, what's the federal funds rate?